One punch, one cafeteria, one mistake that would destroy everything they thought money could protect. When a group of arrogant bullies publicly attacks a quiet black girl at Brookhaven Academy, they expect another easy victim and another viral humiliation. But the moment a mysterious badge slips from her shirt, the laughter dies, faces turn pale, and a chain of secrets begins to unravel. What starts as a cruel act of bullying quickly explodes into a federal investigation, exposing corruption, buried evidence, and a truth powerful enough to shake an entire school. The cafeteria at Brookhaven Academy was louder than usual that afternoon, packed wall to wall with students balancing trays, laughing over crowded tables, and pretending not to notice the new girl sitting alone near the windows. Aaliyah Monroe kept her head down, one hand around a carton of milk, the other resting beside an untouched sandwich. She had learned quickly that the safest way to survive in a new school was to become invisible. No unnecessary eye contact. No sharp answers. No reaction. No matter how cruel the whispers became. But invisibility did not work on Tyler Whitmore. Tyler did not walk through Brookhaven like a student. He moved like he owned the building. Because in a way, everyone knew his family did. His father's name was on the football stadium, the gym scoreboard, even the new library wing. When Tyler entered the cafeteria with Chase Dalton and Ryan Keller behind him, several students lowered their voices before he even reached Aaliyah's table. Ryan already had his phone in his hand. That was never a good sign. Tyler stopped beside Aaliyah's table and looked down at her tray with a smirk. "You lost." "New girl?" he asked. Aaliyah did not answer. She simply picked up her napkin and wiped a small drop of milk from the table. Tyler's smile tightened. Chase leaned closer, grinning like he had been waiting for this all day. "He asked you a question," Chase said, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. Aaliyah finally looked up, calm but cautious. "I'm just eating lunch." That should have been the end of it. But Tyler hated calm. He hated being ignored even more. He shifted his hip hard into the edge of the table, knocking it sideways. Aaliyah's tray slid off and hit the floor with a sharp crash. Her food scattered across the tile. Milk splashed over her sneakers. Laughter broke out from two tables nearby, then spread across the room like a match touching dry paper. Ryan raised his phone higher. "Say something," he whispered, zooming in on Aaliyah's face. But Aaliyah did not give them what they wanted. She crouched down and began collecting the fallen pieces of her lunch. Tyler stared at her, confused by her silence. Most students begged. Some cried. A few snapped back and gave him the perfect excuse to make things worse. But Aaliyah only kept picking up the mess. That made him angrier. "You really don't know how things work here, do you?" he said. "At Brookhaven, people show respect." Aaliyah stood slowly, holding the ruined tray in both hands. "Then maybe you should try it," she said. The cafeteria went quiet at once. Chase's mouth opened slightly. Ryan's camera moved closer. Tyler took a step forward, his face burning red. "What did you just say to me?" Aaliyah did not step back. She did not raise her voice. "I said you should stop before this goes further than you can control." For a moment, even Tyler seemed unsure. There was something in her tone that did not sound like fear. It sounded like warning, and that warning embarrassed him in front of everyone. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. "Apologize," he snapped. Aaliyah looked down at his hand, then back at him. "Let go." Chase laughed nervously and slapped the table. "Look at her, acting tough." Ryan kept recording, whispering. "This is perfect." Tyler leaned in, his voice low and ugly. "You don't come into my school and talk to me like that." Then, before anyone could move, he drove his fist into Aaliyah's shoulder. The punch was not enough to knock her unconscious, but it was hard enough to send her stumbling backward. Her hip struck the edge of the table behind her, and she fell to one knee as the cafeteria erupted. Some students gasped. Others laughed because they were too scared not to. Aaliyah caught herself with one hand on the floor, breathing through the pain, trying to stay composed. But as she fell, Something small and metallic slipped from inside her white shirt. It hit the tile with a clean, sharp sound, spunonche, and slid across the cafeteria floor. The object came to a stop right at Chase Dalton's shoe. Chase looked down, still smiling. "What's this?" he said. He bent and picked it up between two fingers, expecting a cheap school badge. Maybe some fake security pin or costume prop? Ryan swung the phone toward him. Tyler laughed and said, "Probably her little hall monitor medal." But Chase did not laugh. His eyes locked onto the symbol engraved into the metal. Then he turned it over and saw the markings on the back. His face changed so fast that the students nearest him stopped laughing. The color drained from his cheeks. His fingers tightened around the badge as if he had suddenly realized he was holding something dangerous. Tyler noticed the silence and frowned. "What's wrong with you?" he asked. Chase swallowed hard, still staring at the badge. The cafeteria noise faded into a low, uneasy murmur. Aaliyah slowly rose to her feet, one hand pressed against her injured shoulder. Her eyes fixed on the object in Chase's hand. For the first time since Tyler had approached her, her calm expression cracked. Not with fear of Tyler, with fear of what he had just exposed. Chase turned toward Tyler, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tyler, I think you just punched the wrong girl." But Tyler did not believe him. And that arrogance would turn one cafeteria attack into the biggest crisis Brookhaven Academy had ever seen. Aaliyah Monroe moved before Chase Dalton could decide whether to drop the badge or hide it. She stepped through the circle of students with her injured shoulder held stiff, her eyes locked on the small piece of metal in his hand. "Give it back," she said. Her voice was still quiet. But something had changed. It was no longer the calm silence of a girl trying to survive lunch. It was an order. Chase looked from the badge to Aaliyah, then to Tyler, as if waiting for someone else to decide how scared he should be. Tyler noticed the shift in the room and hated it instantly. A few seconds earlier, everyone had been laughing at Aaliyah. Now they were staring at Chase's pale face, wondering what he had seen. Tyler snatched the badge from Chase's hand and held it up like a trophy. "Are you serious?" he shouted. "This is what scared you, a little metal toy." Aaliyah took one step closer. "Tyler, put it down." That made him grin. Not because he was confident, but because he heard the urgency in her voice and mistook it for fear. Ryan Keller moved around them with his phone still recording, whispering to the camera. "New girl brought a fake badge to school. This is insane." The students nearest the front tables leaned in, but their laughter was thinner now. Even the kids who enjoyed seeing Tyler humiliate someone could feel the air changing. Aaliyah's eyes were not on Tyler's face anymore. They were on the badge. "You are not authorized to touch that," she said. Tyler laughed louder. "Authorized. Listen to her. She thinks she's some kind of agent." He flipped the badge over and squinted at the markings engraved on the back. "What is this? CG 17 clearance. Do not read that out loud." Aaliyah cut in. Her voice cracked through the cafeteria hard enough to silence 3 tables at once. It was the first time she had raised it. Not much, but enough. Tyler froze for half a second, then smiled slowly, realizing he had found the nerve. "Oh, now you care," he said. "Now you want to talk." He lifted the badge higher so more students could see it. "Everybody look. The new girl thinks she's protected by the government." Chase reached for Tyler's arm. "Man, stop. I'm serious." Tyler shoved him away. "Don't touch me." But Chase did not look offended. He looked terrified. Across the room, Ms. Barnes, one of the cafeteria workers, abandoned the serving counter and hurried toward them. She had seen fights before. She had seen spilled trays, cruel jokes, and students filming things they should have stopped. But she had never seen a girl react to a badge like it was a live wire. "That's enough," Miss Barnes said, pulling her radio from her apron pocket. "I'm calling security." Ryan stepped slightly in front of her, not touching her, but blocking her path just enough to keep filming. "It's just a joke," he said. "Don't ruin the video." "Ms.?" Barnes glared at him. "Move." But Ryan kept the camera up, hungry for the moment when Aaliyah would finally break. Aaliyah did not break. She walked closer until she was only a few feet from Tyler. Her shoulder ached from the punch, and milk still soaked the edge of her shoes. But her face was steady. "You don't understand what you just did," she said. Tyler tossed the badge onto the nearest lunch table with a metallic slap. "Then explain it," he said. "Or better yet, call whoever you think is coming to save you." A few students gave nervous laughs, but most were silent now. The badge lay between them, small and heavy, catching the fluorescent light. Aaliyah looked at it for 1 second, then slowly reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Tyler spread his arms. "Go ahead. Call your mom. Call the principal. Call the police. My dad knows all of them." Aaliyah did not answer. She opened the keypad, typed a number that was not saved under any name, and pressed call. The cafeteria seemed to shrink around her. Even Ryan's smile faded as he zoomed in. The call connected almost instantly. Aaliyah did not introduce herself. She did not explain. She simply said, "Code gray. Badge exposed. School, cafeteria." The silence that followed felt colder than the room itself. Then a man's voice answered from the other end. Low, controlled, and unmistakably official. "Do not leave your position. Do not let anyone leave that cafeteria." Tyler laughed again. But this time, it sounded forced. While he mocked her, somewhere beyond Brookhaven Academy, a chain of alerts had already begun to activate. Principal Elaine Porter's office looked nothing like the cafeteria. It was quiet, polished, and carefully arranged to make parents feel safe. Framed awards lined the wall behind her desk. A photo of Brookhaven's new football stadium sat beside a silver nameplate. And in the corner of that photo, Tyler Whitmore stood smiling next to his father. Aaliyah noticed it the moment she walked in. So did Tyler. That was why he relaxed. As soon as he sat down, he was no longer in the cafeteria, surrounded by witnesses and whispers. He was in a room where his last name had weight. Principal Porter folded her hands on the desk and looked at Aaliyah first, not Tyler. "Miss Monroe," she said, her voice cold and controlled. "This school has a zero-tolerance policy for threats and disruptive behavior." Aaliyah stared at her. "I was punched." Tyler scoffed from the chair beside Chase. "She's lying." Ryan Keller lifted his phone quickly. "I have video," he said, already unlocking the screen. Porter's attention shifted to him with visible relief, as if the truth had conveniently arrived in the shape she preferred. Ryan played the clip. On the screen, Aaliyah was seen standing near the table after her tray had already fallen. The angle showed students shouting. It showed Aaliyah stepping toward Tyler. It showed the badge on the table. But it did not show Tyler knocking over her food. It did not show his hand grabbing her wrist. And it did not show the punch. The video jumped just before impact, then resumed with Aaliyah on one knee and students yelling around her. "There," Tyler said, leaning forward. She brought some fake government badge and started threatening everyone. Chase did not speak. His eyes stayed low, fixed on the carpet. Aaliyah looked from Ryan's phone to Principal Porter. "That video is edited." Ryan laughed. "Edited? You mean because it doesn't make you look innocent?" Aaliyah ignored him. "Check the cafeteria camera." The room paused for a fraction of a second too long. Vice Principal Victor Hale, who had been standing near the filing cabinet with his arms crossed, cleared his throat. Unfortunately, the cafeteria camera system had a malfunction this morning. Aaliyah turned toward him slowly. This morning, Hale nodded. "Yes, we already submitted a maintenance request." His answer came too fast. Too smooth. Not like a man reporting a problem. Like a man repeating a prepared line. Aaliyah's eyes sharpened. Then preserve the server logs. Preserve the hallway footage outside the cafeteria. Preserve the original files from every phone that recorded the incident. Porter's expression hardened. "You are not in a position to give instructions here." Aaliyah leaned forward slightly. "I'm asking you not to destroy evidence." The word evidence changed the temperature of the room. Tyler's smirk flickered. Ryan's thumb moved across his phone screen. Chase saw it and swallowed. Principal Porter stood, trying to reclaim authority. What I see is a new student who caused a disturbance, carried an unidentified object onto campus, and made several students feel unsafe. Aaliyah's voice stayed even. Tyler hit me. Porter looked at Tyler. Tyler gave a wounded little shrug. Almost perfect in its performance. I never touched her. She came at me first. Ryan nodded quickly. That's what happened. Chase still said nothing. Aaliyah looked at him. Chase saw it. Everyone turned. Chase's jaw tightened. For 1 second, the truth sat right behind his teeth. Then Tyler shifted in his chair and stared at him. Chase looked down again. I didn't see clearly. He muttered. Porter pulled a disciplinary form from a drawer. Until we determine the nature of that badge, you will be suspended, pending review. Aaliyah did not flinch, but her eyes moved to Hale. The camera did not fail by accident. She said. Hale's face went still. Too still. Porter picked up her pen. That is enough. The pen touched the paper. Then the phone on her desk rang. Porter frowned and reached for it, irritated by the interruption. But when she looked at the caller ID, the color drained from her face. On the screen were 5 words that made Tyler stop smiling. Federal Office Priority Line. One phone call turned the room's arrogance into dead silence. Principal Elaine Porter picked up the phone with the stiff irritation of someone who believed her authority had just been interrupted. This is Principal Porter, she said. Her eyes still on Aaliyah, as if the girl were the problem sitting in the room. But whatever came through the receiver changed her expression before she could finish her next sentence. Her shoulders straightened. Her lips parted slightly. The confidence drained from her face in slow, visible layers. Vice Principal Victor Hale noticed first. Then Chase did. Then Tyler, who had been leaning back in his chair like this, was all a boring school meeting, sat forward with a frown. Porter listened without speaking. Aaliyah remained still in the chair across from the desk, her hands folded in her lap, her injured shoulder tense beneath her white shirt. She did not look relieved. She did not smile. She did not ask the caller to defend her. Her silence was sharper than any accusation. It made Tyler uncomfortable in a way he could not explain. He had expected tears. He had expected excuses. He had expected fear. Instead, Aaliyah sat there like someone waiting for a process she already understood. Porter finally swallowed. Yes, sit, she said quietly. Tyler's eyebrows lifted. Sir, that one word cracked the room open. The principal listened again, then repeated the instructions in a strained voice. Lock all exterior gates. Preserve all cafeteria camera footage. Preserve server logs. Identify every student present during the incident. No one is to touch the badge. Her eyes flicked toward the small metal object, sealed now inside a clear plastic evidence sleeve on her desk. A few minutes earlier, she had been ready to call it an unidentified object. Now she would not even move it. Tyler scoffed. This is ridiculous, he said. You're letting her fake phone call scare you. Porter raised one hand sharply, ordering him to be quiet without even looking at him. That made Tyler's face darken. Nobody at Brookhaven silenced him. Not teachers, not coaches, not even administrators. But Principal Porter was no longer performing for Tyler. She was listening to a man on the other end of the line whose voice had taken control of her office from miles away. Chase Dalton leaned toward the desk, just enough to read the name Porter had scribbled on a notepad, Marcus Reed. His stomach dropped. He knew that name. His father had spent 20 years in law enforcement and had mentioned Marcus Reed only once. During a late-night conversation Chase was not supposed to hear. Reed was not local police. He was not school security. He was the kind of federal agent adults lowered their voices to talk about. Chase stared at Aaliyah, then at the badge, and for the first time, guilt began to compete with fear. Porter's voice trembled when she spoke again. Agent Reed is asking one question. She looked around the office. Who struck Miss Monroe? The room went silent. Aaliyah did not move. Hale's jaw tightened. Chase stared at the floor. Tyler reacted instantly. Nobody struck her. He said, "She fell. She caused the whole thing herself." His answer came too fast. Too polished. Too familiar. Porter looked at him. But this time there was doubt in her eyes. Tyler saw it and hated it. Behind him, Ryan Keller shifted near the doorway, his phone hidden low against his thigh. He typed quickly under the edge of his hoodie, thinking no one could see. A message flashed on the screen before he hit send. "I'll delete the original." The words reflected faintly in the glass surface of Porter's desk. Aaliyah's eyes moved once. That was all. She had seen it. Ryan sent the message to Tyler, and Tyler's phone buzzed in his pocket. Before he could check it, Aaliyah spoke softly. "Too late." Everyone turned toward her. Ryan froze. Aaliyah looked directly at him, her voice calm and final. "The original isn't on your phone anymore." Tyler opened his mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, he looked genuinely confused. Then, above the ceiling, a low, heavy sound began to build. It grew louder by the second, vibrating through the windows and rattling the framed photo of the Whitmore Stadium on the wall. A helicopter was circling over Brookhaven Academy. The helicopter disappeared beyond the roofline, but the damage had already been done. Every student at Brookhaven Academy had heard it. Every teacher had stepped into the hallway. And every rumor that had been whispered after the cafeteria incident exploded into panic when the first black SUV rolled through the main gate. Then a second one followed. Then a third. They moved without sirens, without flashing lights, without drama. But that made them even more terrifying. They did not look like they were arriving to ask questions. They looked like they already knew the answers. Students pressed against classroom windows as the vehicle stopped in front of the administration building. 3 people stepped out in dark suits. The first was Agent Marcus Reed. Dull, calm, and expressionless. Beside him walked Agent Naomi Grant, carrying a sealed evidence case. Behind them came Agent Luis Carter, already scanning the courtyard like he was memorizing every exit. No one shouted. No one rushed. That quiet control made the entire school feel smaller. Principal Porter met them at the front entrance with a face that tried to look professional and failed. Inside the office, Tyler Whitmore had stopped pretending this was funny. Aaliyah sat in the same chair, Seal, her shoulders still stiff from the punch. Chase looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Ryan held his phone tighter. But the moment Agent Naomi stepped in, her eyes went straight to his hand. "Ryan Keller," she asked. Ryan blinked. Yeah, Naomi held out her palm. "Your phone." Ryan pulled back. "Why? It's just a video. This is school stuff." Agent Reed looked at him once. There is reason to believe the footage was altered after a protected identification item was exposed. "Hand it over." Ryan's face went pale. "I didn't alter anything. It was a joke." Naomi did not move her hand. "Then you will have no problem preserving the evidence." After a long, shaking second, Ryan gave her the phone. Agent Reed turned to Principal Porter. "Separate everyone who was directly involved. No discussion between them. No calls. No message. No coaching." Tyler's head snapped up. "You can't stop me from calling my dad." Reed looked at him calmly. "You may call a parent. You may not coordinate testimony." Tyler sneered, but his fingers were already dialing. He put the phone to his ear and turned away, as if privacy still belonged to him. The call connected almost instantly. "Dad," Tyler said, forcing his voice steady. "Something stupid happened at school. These federal guys are here because some girl had a fake badge or something." Principal Porter flinched at the word fake. Agent Reed's eyes moved toward Tyler's phone. Tyler listened, then said, "No, it's not serious. They're just making it serious." Aaliyah watched him without expression. Preston Whitmore's voice came through the speaker faintly at first, sharp and impatient. "Put Porter on." Tyler hesitated. then handed the phone to the principal. Porter took it with visible relief. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm trying to handle the situation carefully." Preston cut her off. His voice was loud enough for half the room to hear. "Handle it quietly. I don't want my son's name dragged through some nonsense before the press gets wind of it." Porter's eyes darted toward Agent Reed. Reed stepped closer. "Speaker," he said. Porter froze. Excuse me. Reed's voice did not rise. "Put the call on speaker." Tyler's face tightened. Porter obeyed. Preston Whitmore's voice filled the room. "Airline, listen to me. The stadium dedication is next month. The board cannot afford a scandal right now. Whatever this girl is claiming, settle it internally." Agent Reed spoke for the first time. "Mr. Whitmore, this is Special Agent Marcus Reed. You are on speaker in the presence of federal officers." There was a pause. Then Preston, "Arrogant enough to think money still mattered more than law," said the one sentence no one in that room would ever forget. "How much money does it take to make this disappear?" The office went completely still. Tyler's mouth opened. Principal Porter looked sick. Chase lowered his head. Aaliyah finally looked away from Tyler and toward the badge sealed inside Naomi's evidence case. Agent Reed's voice turned colder. "Mr. Whitmore, this call just became evidence." From that moment, the cafeteria attack was no longer a fight between students. It had pulled Brookhaven's most powerful family into a federal investigation. The security room at Brookhaven Academy was small, windowless, and colder than the rest of the building. A wall of monitors showed empty hallways, classroom doors, the parking lot, and the cafeteria, now frozen under the weight of what had happened there. Agent Naomi Grant stepped inside first, followed by Principal Porter, Vice Principal Victor Hale, Aaliyah Monroe, Ryan Keller, and Owen Mills, the school's IT technician. Owen looked like he had not taken a full breath since the agents arrived. His fingers trembled near the keyboard. Hale stood behind him, stiff and watchful, like a man guarding more than a computer system. Agent Naomi placed Ryan's sealed phone on the desk and looked at Owen. "Pull up the cafeteria footage from the last hour." Owen hesitated. It was only a second, but Naomi saw it. Hale jumped in before Owen could speak. "As I already explained, that camera suffered a malfunction this morning. We submitted a maintenance ticket." Naomi did not look at him. "Mr. Mills, I asked you." Owen swallowed. His eyes moved to Hale, then to the monitors. "The camera didn't malfunction," he said quietly. The room went still. Hale's face hardened. "Owen?" It was not a warning. It was a command. Owen flinched, but Agent Naomi stepped between them. "Let him answer." Owen stared at the keyboard as if the keys might save him. It was moved off the live display. The feed was redirected to internal storage. Principal Porter turned toward Hale. "Victor, what is he talking about?" Hale's jaw tightened. "He's confused. He doesn't understand the system." Owen shook his head, his voice cracking. "I do understand it. I'm the one who was told to change it." Aaliyah's eyes narrowed. Ryan shifted uncomfortably near the door. Agent Naomi opened her evidence case and removed a storage drive. "Create a full backup. Now, server logs, camera footage, access history, all of it." Hale stepped forward. "You can't just take school property without Naomi. Cut him off without raising her voice. Do not interfere with evidence preservation." The words landed like a locked door. Owen began typing. The monitor flickered, then switched from the frozen cafeteria view to an archived video file. The timestamp appeared. The cafeteria came alive again on screen. Students moved between tables. Aaliyah sat alone by the window. Then Tyler Whitmore entered with Chase and Ryan. No one spoke as the video played. They watched Tyler stop at Aaliyah's table. They watched him slam his hip into it. They watched the tray crash to the floor. Ryan's face went pale as the angle clearly showed him raising his phone before anything escalated. Chase appeared beside Tyler, laughing, clapping once, encouraging the crowd. Then came the moment. No edited clip could hide. Tyler grabbed Aaliyah's wrist, leaned in, and punched her hard in the shoulder. Principal Porter covered her mouth. Ryan whispered, "It wasn't supposed to look like that." Agent Naomi turned to him. "It looks exactly like what happened." Ryan shook his head quickly. "I mean, I only edited it for fun. Everybody edits videos. It was just a joke." Aaliyah did not look at him. Her eyes stayed on the screen, watching herself fall, watching the badge slip from her shirt and slide across the floor. The room was silent enough to hear the hum of the monitors. Then Owen said, "There's audio." He clicked once. The speakers crackled, and Tyler's voice filled the security room. Clear and ugly. "Just hit her. My dad will handle the rest." No one moved. Principal Porter looked as if the floor had disappeared beneath her. Hale's hand tightened into a fist at his side. Ryan stopped trying to explain. The original video had not merely proven that Tyler punched Aaliyah. It had proven intent. It had proven confidence. It had proven that Tyler believed power would protect him before the attack even happened. Agent Naomi saved the file, then turned to Owen. "Is there anything else?" Owen did not answer right away. His face had gone gray. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then he clicked into a restricted directory buried beneath the school's security archive. "There's something worse," he said. A locked folder appeared on the screen. Its title was Monroe Plan. Aaliyah's name had been inside Brookhaven's system before the day she was attacked. And that meant what happened in the cafeteria was never random. The temporary disciplinary room had never felt so small. Principal Porter sat at one end of the table, pale and silent. Tyler Whitmore sat beside Chase Dalton, no longer leaning back like the untouchable king of Brookhaven. Ryan Keller kept glancing at the door, as if he could still run from what his phone had already revealed. Across from them, Aaliyah Monroe sat with her hands folded, calm but watchful. Agent Marcus Reed stood near the screen while Owen Mills connected the archive security folder to the projector. No one spoke when the title appeared again in bold white letters. Monroe Plan? Owen's hand shook as he opened it. The first file loaded onto the screen, a photo of Aaliyah walking through the west hallway 3 days after she arrived at Brookhaven. The second showed her sitting alone in the library. The third showed her at her locker. Then the parking lot. Then the cafeteria. Each image had a timestamp. Each had notes typed beside it. New girl, no friends. Always alone. Doesn't react. Possible target. Principal Porter whispered, "May God." But Aaliyah did not look surprised. She looked like someone watching a trap finally reveal its shape. Agent Reed turned toward Ryan. "Who created this folder?" Ryan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Chase answered first, barely above a whisper. "Ryan did." Ryan spun toward him. "Shut up." Chase's fear finally broke through his loyalty. "No, I'm not taking this alone." Tyler slammed his hand on the table. "Both of you shut up." Reed's gaze moved to Tyler. "That will be the last time you give instructions in this room." Owen clicked another file. A document opened with a list of roles. Ryan was labeled Content. Chase was labeled Crowd. Tyler was labeled Contact. Under Tyler's name, someone had written Bump Table. Force reaction. Make her swing first if possible. The words sat on the screen like a confession. The plan had never been a random lunchroom joke. It was organized. It was targeted. It was meant to make Aaliyah look violent before anyone asked why she had been attacked. Ryan's voice cracked. It was just supposed to be a video. We were going to post it. Everyone does stuff like that. Aaliyah finally looked at him. "No," she said. "Everyone doesn't stalk someone for a week and plan how to break them in public." Ryan lowered his eyes. Chase looked sick. Tyler stared at the screen, his face tightening as each file stripped away another excuse. Agent Reed opened the last note in the folder. Cafeteria humiliation. Best angle near windows. Ryan films. Chase starts laughter. Tyler makes contact. If she fights back, Porter suspends her. Principal Porter's breath caught. I never agreed to that. Aaliyah turned toward her slowly. But they believed you would. That sentence hit harder than shouting could have. Porter had no answer, because everyone in that room knew why Tyler believed it. For the first time, Aaliyah spoke without being asked. I knew someone was following me. Chase looked up sharply. Ryan froze. I saw the same faces in the hallway. The same phone pointed at me in the parking lot. The same footsteps behind me outside the library. Tyler tried to laugh, but it came out weak. Then why didn't you report it? Aaliyah's eyes locked on his. Because I needed to know if it was just bullying or if someone had found me. The room changed. Porter looked confused. Chase looked terrified. Ryan looked like he wanted to vanish. Tyler's face slowly drained of color. Agent Reed did not interrupt her. He only watched the others absorb what she had just said. Aaliyah continued. Quieter now. I was not placed at Brookhaven to become popular. I was placed here to stay unnoticed. Reed stepped forward then, his voice steady and cold. Miss Monroe is connected to a protected federal matter. Her location, her identity, and any identifying items related to her security status are restricted. Tyler stared at him. What does that mean? Reed looked directly at Tyler. And for once, no money, no stadium, no family name stood between them. It means you didn't just bully a student. He said, you may have exposed the location of a protected witness. The phrase landed like a bomb. Protected witness. Suddenly the badge, the phone call, the SUVs, the helicopter, and Aaliyah's terrible calm all made sense. Brookhaven Academy was no longer dealing with a cafeteria attack. It had walked straight into real danger. The student counseling room was the only place in Brookhaven Academy that still felt untouched by the chaos outside. Its walls were painted a soft blue. Motivational posters hung beside a shelf of stress balls and college brochures. And a box of tissues sat in the center of a round table, as if every problem could be handled with quiet voices and polite concern. But nothing about what happened to Aaliyah Monroe was polite anymore. She sat across from Agent Marcus Reed and Agent Naomi Grant. Her injured shoulder wrapped in a temporary ice pack. Her expression controlled but tired. Counselor Janet Price sat near the door, shaken by how quickly an ordinary school day had turned into a federal matter. Agent Reed kept his voice low. Aaliyah, we need your statement. Aaliyah nodded. I understand. Naomi opened a file on her tablet. Start with why you were placed at Brookhaven. For the first time that day, Janet Price looked confused. Aaliyah glanced at her. Then back at the agents. My family entered protection after my mother testified against a corruption network tied to private education funding. The words were calm, but they landed heavily in the room. Janet's hand moved to her mouth. Education funding, she whispered. Aaliyah nodded. Donations, construction contracts, scholarship money, board influence. My mother saw records she was never supposed to see. Reed watched her carefully. And your instructions, Aaliyah looked down at the table. Do not stand out. Do not fight. Do not reveal anything. If exposed, activate emergency protocol. Her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the ice pack. So when Tyler hit me, I couldn't hit back. When they laughed, I couldn't explain. When they touched the badge, I had to call the line. Janet's eyes filled with guilt. You were carrying all of that alone. Aaliyah gave a faint, humorless smile. That was the point. Before anyone could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. Janet stood and opened it just enough to see Mia Coleman, a quiet junior, with trembling hands and red eyes. Ms. Price, Mia whispered. I need to talk to them. Janet looked to Reed. Reed nodded once. Mia stepped inside, clutching her backpack strap so tightly her knuckles had turned white. She looked at Aaliyah first. I'm sorry, she said. I saw what Tyler did. I should have said something sooner. Aaliyah did not blame her. She simply said, why didn't you? Mia swallowed hard. Because he did it to me too. The room went silent. Mia sat down slowly, as if her legs might give out. Last year, Tyler and Chase cornered me behind the gym after practice. Ryan humiliated. They shoved me into the equipment rack and told everyone I attacked them first. Her voice shook, but she kept going. When I reported it, Vice Principal Hale said there wasn't enough evidence. Then my statement disappeared. 2 days later, I was the one written up for aggressive behavior. Naomi leaned forward. Who closed the case? Mia looked at the floor. Ale. Janet's face changed from sadness to horror. Mia, why didn't you tell me? Mia's laugh broke in the middle. I tried. The appointment was canceled. Then my parents got a letter saying I was creating drama that could affect my college recommendations. Aaliyah's eyes hardened. She had been attacked for 1 day. Mia had been trapped in the system for a year. Mia continued. Tyler doesn't just bully people. He picks students who won't be believed. New kids, scholarship kids, black students, kids with no power here. And every time someone reports him, the record changes. Reed and Naomi exchanged a look. This was no longer just about Aaliyah's exposure. It was a pattern, a protected pattern. Mia reached into her backpack with shaking hands and pulled out a small USB drive wrapped in notebook paper. I copied everything I could before they locked me out of the student portal. She said, emails, screenshots, videos, names of other students. She placed it on the table like it weighed more than metal. Then she looked at Aaliyah, her fear finally giving way to anger. I've kept this for a year. Mia said, today, I'm not scared anymore. The USB drive would open a past. Brookhaven had worked very hard to bury. The emergency boardroom at Brookhaven Academy had been built for polished meetings, donor presentations, and quiet decisions made behind expensive glass doors. But that afternoon, it felt more like an interrogation room. Principal Elaine Porter sat rigidly at the long table, her hands folded so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Vice Principal Victor Hale stood near the wall, pretending to be calm. But his eyes kept following the USB drive now connected to Agent Naomi Grant's laptop. Aaliyah Monroe sat beside Mia Coleman, both girls silent. Both watching the adults who had once controlled every version of the truth. Agent Marcus Reed stood behind Naomi, waiting as file after file opened on the screen. The first folder contained deleted complaints. Not one, not two, dozens. Each report had a student's name and the same pattern. Tyler Whitmore accused of harassment, intimidation, threats, or physical assault. The second folder held photographs of bruised arms, torn backpacks, broken glasses, and one image of Mia Coleman's swollen wrist after the gym incident she had been blamed for. The third folder was worse. It contained emails between Vice Principal Hale and several parents. In one message, Hale warned a mother that pursuing disciplinary action could create unnecessary academic stress for her child. In another, he described Tyler as an important public face of Brookhaven athletics. The meaning was clear. Students had been hurt, and the school had protected the boy who hurt them. Then Naomi played an audio file. Hale's voice filled the room, low and persuasive. I understand your concern, Mrs. Coleman, but making this larger than it needs to be could damage Mia's college recommendations. Tyler is a high-profile student. These things are better handled quietly. Mia lowered her eyes. Aaliyah reached under the table and lightly touched her hand. For a second, Mia looked like she might cry, but she did not. She had already done the hardest thing. She had brought the truth into the room. Before anyone could speak, the boardroom door opened. Preston Whitmore entered with a tailored suit, a hard expression, and a lawyer walking half a step behind him. He did not look like a father rushing in because his son was in trouble. He looked like a man arriving to take back control. This meeting ends now, Preston said. His lawyer placed a leather folder on the table. My client is deeply concerned about the handling of this situation and the exposure of minors to federal materials on school property. Agent Reed did not move. Your client is not in charge here. Preston ignored him and looked straight at Principal Porter. Elaine, you allowed a student to bring some kind of federal object into this school. That is the issue. Not Tyler. Not a cafeteria misunderstanding. That girl put everyone here at risk. Aaliyah's face remained still. But Mia's eyes widened in disbelief. Porter opened her mouth. But no answer came. Preston turned toward Reed. I want to know who she really is and why she was placed near my son. Reed's voice became dangerously quiet. Do not ask that question again. The lawyer touched Preston's arm. A small warning. Preston shook him off. His pride was stronger than his caution. No. I have a right to know why that girl was here. She should never have been put in this school. The room froze. Aaliyah slowly lifted her eyes to him. Reed did the same. Naomi stopped typing. Even Hale looked at Preston as if he had just stepped on a wire he could not see. Reed took one slow step forward. What did you say? Preston's jaw tightened. I said she should not have been placed here. Naomi reached into her case and placed a sealed file on the table. Her voice was calm, but every word cut deeper than the last. The question is not why Aaliyah was here, she said. The question is why you knew she was here. For the first time that day, Preston Whitmore no longer controlled the room he believed he owned. The main hall of Brookhaven Academy had never been so silent while so many people were inside it. Students lined the walls in uneasy clusters. Teachers stood near classroom doors, pretending they were there to keep order, though most of them were watching with the same stunned fear as everyone else. At the far end of the hall, Tyler Whitmore stood beside his father. Preston, still trying to look untouchable. But the confidence had cracked. Across from them stood Agent Marcus Reed, Principal Porter, and Aaliyah Monroe, whose quiet presence had become the center of a storm no one had seen coming. Then the front doors opened. A man in a dark suit stepped into the building. He did not rush. He did not shout. He did not arrive with flashing cameras or a crowd behind him. But every federal agent in the hall straightened the moment he entered. Agent Reed turned first. Agent Naomi, standing near the security office, paused mid-sentence. Ava Lausgarter, stationed by the exit, shifted into a sharper stance. The reaction moved through the hallway before the students even understood who the man was. Tyler looked him up and down, then gave a nervous laugh. What now? Her dad. No one answered. The man walked straight toward Aaliyah. For the first time all afternoon, her face changed. Not much. Just enough for the students nearby to see that this was not another agent. This was someone she had been waiting for. Malcolm Monroe stopped in front of his daughter. His eyes moved to the ice pack on her shoulder, then to the faint stain of dried milk on her shoes. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. Are you hurt? Aaliyah nodded once. I'm okay. Malcolm looked at her for a long second. The kind of look only a father could give when he knew his child was being brave, because she had no other choice. Then he turned. Principal Porter's face went pale the moment she recognized him. The name came back to her from an old legal report, one that had once dominated the news. Malcolm Monroe had not been just a government lawyer. He had been a federal prosecutor, the kind who built cases slowly, quietly, and then walked into court with enough evidence to destroy men who thought money made them safe. He had taken down corrupt officials, fake charity networks, and private contractors who hid behind clean suits and public donations. And now he was standing in Brookhaven Academy, looking directly at Preston Whitmore. Preston tried to recover first. Mr. Monroe, I assume you're here as a parent. Let me be clear. My son has been dragged into an overblown situation because your daughter brought restricted material into a school. Malcolm did not interrupt. That made Preston speak faster. This could have been handled privately. It still can be, if everyone acts reasonably. Malcolm stepped closer. Not enough to threaten, but enough to make Preston stop talking. You still think privacy is your shield? He said quietly. The hall seemed to hold its breath. Tyler looked between the two men, confused by the way. His father's expression shifted. Preston knew Malcolm, or at least he knew what Malcolm represented. Malcolm turned toward the students. His voice remained controlled, but it carried through the hall with terrifying clarity. My daughter was placed here under protection because her mother helped expose a corruption network tied to education funding, school donations, and private contracts. A murmur moved through the crowd. Principal Porter lowered her eyes. Preston's lawyer whispered something urgently, but Preston did not move. Malcolm looked back at Tyler, then at Preston. You did not just hit my daughter in a cafeteria. You touched a living witness connected to a case your family has been trying to bury. The words struck the hallway like glass breaking. Tyler's face drained of color. He turned toward his father for the first time, not with arrogance, but fear. Dad, he whispered. What is he talking about? And that question cracked the wall of secrets. Preston Whitmore had spent years building. The auditorium at Brookhaven Academy was filled within minutes, but no one spoke above a whisper. Students who had laughed in the cafeteria now sat with their hands folded, eyes lowered. I afraid to look toward the front row, where Aaliyah Monroe sat beside her father. Teachers stood along the walls, faces tight with shame and uncertainty. On the stage, Agent Marcus Reed placed a laptop on the podium, while Principal Porter stood nearby, smaller than she had ever looked. Tyler, Jace, and Ryan sat under supervision near the side aisle. Vice Principal Hale stood beside the exit with Agent Louise Carter, close enough to make it clear he was not free to leave. Agent Reed did not give a speech. He simply dimmed the lights and played the cafeteria footage. The entire school watched Tyler knock Aaliyah's tray to the floor. They watched Chase stir the crowd. They watched Ryan raise his phone before anything happened, ready to turn humiliation into entertainment. Then they watched Tyler grab Aaliyah's wrist and punch her hard enough to send her down. The sound of the cafeteria and the video echoed through the auditorium. But inside the room, no one laughed. Not one student. Not one teacher. When the badge slipped from Aaliyah's shirt and slid across the tile, several students looked away, as if the shame had finally reached them. Then came the Monroe plan. Photos appeared on the screen. Aaliyah in the hallway. Aaliyah in the library. Aaliyah near the parking lot. Aaliyah sitting alone in the cafeteria. Notes followed. Weak target. No friends. Best angle near windows. Make her react first. The cruelty was no longer a rumor. It had structure. It had planning. It had names attached to it. After that came the emails. Deleted complaints. Missing statements. Parents warned to stay quiet. Students described as problems because they had dared to report Tyler Whitmore. Then Agent Reed played the recording of Hale pressuring Mia's family not to make the assault behind the gym larger than it needed to be. Mia sat frozen in the second row, her face pale, until Aaliyah turned and gave her a small nod. That was all it took. Mia stood. Her voice shook at first, but it grew stronger with every sentence. Tyler hurt me last year. She said, I told the truth. They erased it. Then they made me feel like I was the problem. A murmur moved through the auditorium. A boy near the back stood next. He did it to me too, he said. Then another student, then another. On everyone, the silence Brookhaven had forced on its victims began to break. Principal Porter stepped to the microphone with tears in her eyes. Aaliyah, Mia, and every student harmed by this failure, I am deeply sorry. But Malcolm Monroe rose before she could turn the apology into a performance. His voice was calm, but it stopped her cold. An apology is not a consequence, he said. This school will preserve every file, identify every adult who ignored or altered complaints, suspend all involved parties, pending review, and transfer the complete record to investigators. Public trust is not repaired by speeches. It is repaired by action. Porter nodded. Humiliated but trapped by the truth. Tyler was suspended immediately. Chase and Ryan were removed from campus, pending disciplinary action. Hale tried to object, but Agent Louise Carter stepped beside him and escorted him out for questioning. The auditorium watched the man who had buried so many complaints walk down the aisle, with no authority left. Tyler looked around, desperate, as if waiting for his father to save him again, but no one moved. Then Agent Reed stepped toward him. There's one final recording, he said. And this time, the voice on it does not belong to a student. The last audio file would decide whether Brookhaven was facing a school scandal or evidence in something much larger. 3 weeks later, Brookhaven Academy looked almost exactly the way it had before the day. Everything changed. The morning sunlight still poured through the cafeteria windows, casting long golden rectangles across the polished floor. The same rows of tables stood in the same places. The same lunch line stretched toward the serving counter. The smell of fresh coffee drifted from the faculty lounge, and students still hurried through the hallways carrying heavy backpacks and unfinished homework. To anyone driving past the school, nothing seemed different. But for the people inside those walls, everything had changed. When Aaliyah Monroe walked through the cafeteria doors that morning, conversations faded almost instantly. No one pointed. No one laughed. No phones were lifted into the air, searching for another embarrassing moment to post online. Weeks earlier, dozens of students had watched Tyler Whitmore knock her lunch onto the floor before punching her in front of the entire cafeteria. Many of them had laughed because it was easier than standing alone. Now those same students lowered their eyes, ashamed of the silence they had mistaken for safety. Aaliyah noticed them, but she did not judge them. She simply continued walking toward the same table by the window where she had been sitting on the day everything began. The chair was still there. The table still reflected the morning sunlight. Even the scratch on the edge where her tray had hit the floor remained. For a brief moment, memories rushed back. She could almost hear the crash of the tray, Tyler's mocking laughter, Ryan's camera recording every second, Chase urging the crowd to laugh louder. Then she remembered another sound, the metallic ring of a badge sliding across the cafeteria floor. A single piece of metal had exposed a chain of lies that had survived for years behind Brookhaven's polished reputation. This time, someone pulled out the chair beside her. It was Mia Coleman. Neither girl spoke immediately. They did not need to. Some friendships were built through years of shared memories. Others were built through surviving the same storm. Mia smiled quietly before placing her lunch on the table. "I'm glad you came back," she said softly. Aaliyah returned the smile. "I'm glad you did too." Around them, other students slowly returned to their conversations. But the atmosphere remained different. There was no fear in the room anymore. There was accountability. Students who had once stayed silent now greeted Aaliyah with respectful nods. Several younger students smiled at Mia. The cafeteria no longer belonged to the loudest voices. It belonged to everyone. Outside the windows, construction workers were removing the large banner that had once celebrated Tyler Whitmore as the face of Brookhaven football. His locker had already been cleared, following the independent investigation. Tyler had been permanently transferred to another school under strict disciplinary conditions, while separate legal proceedings addressed the assault and the evidence uncovered during the federal inquiry. Chase Dalton and Ryan Keller had avoided criminal charges only after fully cooperating with investigators, publicly apologizing to the students they had harmed, and entering a long-term behavioral rehabilitation program ordered through the school district. Their apologies did not erase the pain they had caused, but they marked the beginning of taking responsibility instead of hiding behind popularity. Vice Principal Victor Hale had been suspended indefinitely, while investigators continued examining years of missing reports and altered disciplinary records. Several former students had come forward after seeing the evidence made public, confirming that complaints had repeatedly disappeared under his supervision. Meanwhile, Preston Whitmore found himself facing investigations into allegations that he had attempted to interfere with evidence preservation and improperly influence school officials. The influence that had once seemed untouchable was now being examined under the same legal standards that applied to everyone else. At precisely 10 o'clock, Acting Principal Grace Ellison entered the cafeteria. Unlike previous administrators, she did not stand behind a podium. She stood among the students. "I want everyone to hear this together." She began. "Brookhaven Academy failed, many of you. We cannot change the past, but we can change how this school protects every student from this day forward." The cafeteria became completely silent. Grace continued. "Effective immediately, every report of bullying will be stored in an independent district database that cannot be altered by a single administrator. Security camera recordings can no longer be disabled or redirected without authorization from multiple departments. Every student has the right to request witness statements. And every complaint will receive written documentation that cannot disappear. Several teachers exchanged emotional glances. Some students quietly applauded. Others simply sat in thoughtful silence. For the first time in years, the rules seemed designed to protect the vulnerable rather than the powerful. Near the cafeteria entrance, Malcolm Monroe stood quietly watching his daughter. He had chosen not to interrupt her return to ordinary life. That, more than anything, was what he had wanted for her all along, not headlines, not attention, not revenge, but the simple freedom to attend school without fear. Aaliyah looked toward her father. He smiled, not proudly, not triumphantly. Just like a father, relieved to see his daughter eating lunch in peace. She reached into the inside pocket of her blazer and carefully removed the small metal badge that had changed everything. The polished surface reflected the sunlight for just a moment before she turned it over in her hands. Weeks earlier, she had looked at it as a responsibility she could never escape. It had represented secrecy, danger, and constant caution. Now it meant something different. It reminded her that courage was not always loud. Sometimes courage meant remaining silent until the right moment. Sometimes it meant refusing to become the person your enemies expected you to become. Sometimes it meant trusting that truth, no matter how deeply buried, would eventually find its way into the light. She looked at the badge one final time before sliding it carefully back inside her jacket. It was never a symbol of power. It was a reminder that some people are forced to remain invisible simply to survive. But the truth itself can never remain hidden forever. As lunch continued, laughter slowly returned to the cafeteria. This time, it was genuine. No one was being mocked. No one was being recorded without permission. Students talked freely. Teachers walked between tables without anxiety. And the room that had once become the stage for cruelty had become a place where respect finally felt normal. The punch Tyler Whitmore threw had once made an entire cafeteria laugh. But the badge that slipped from Aaliyah Monroe's shirt forced an entire school to confront the truth. And from that day forward, no one at Brookhaven Academy ever asked who Aaliyah Monroe was. They simply remembered her as the quiet young woman whose courage exposed years of injustice and reminded an entire community that real strength is measured not by power, money, or popularity, but by the willingness to stand for the truth when everyone else chooses to look away. What began as a cruel punch meant to humiliate one quiet black girl ended up exposing years of lies. An abuse hidden behind power and privilege? Aaliyah never fought back with violence. She fought with patience, courage, and the truth, proving that real strength isn't about who can throw the hardest punch, but who refuses to surrender their dignity. Now we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you had been in that cafeteria, would you have stood up for Aaliyah? Or would you have stayed silent like everyone else? Share your answer in the comments below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories of justice, courage, and unforgettable plot twists. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.